Good afternoon, my dear learners. You are welcome to today's virtual class. My name is Dr. S.A. Sule, your course facilitator for EDU 710. The title of the course is History of Education in Nigeria. The course has 10 study sessions, and they are all clearly outlined in your study module. Today's discussion is centered on the study session 1, which is African Traditional or Indigenous Education, ATE, and Islamic Education in Nigeria. When you have carefully studied this session, you should be able to, 1, define the concepts of African Traditional Education and Islamic Education. 2, list and explain 4 goals of African Traditional Education and Islamic Education. 3, describe the contents and methods used in African Traditional Education. 4, identify the general characteristics or features of African Traditional and Islamic Education in Nigeria. Finally, you should be able to highlight and discuss any 4 contributions of Islamic education to world civilization. Introduction. African Traditional or Indigenous Education, known as ATE, and Islamic education were the 2 forms of education known to the Nigerian people before the advent of the Western education, which was brought to us through the activities of the early Christian missionaries in Nigeria in 1842. The concept of African Traditional or Indigenous Education. What is it all about? African Traditional or Indigenous Education is that traditional method or means through which the societal culture and cultural practices, norms, traditions, etc., etc., are passed to the younger ones in the society without any foreign interference or influence. In Nigeria, it was the system of education in practice before the advent of Islamic and Western education. Hence, indigenous education is as old as man. What about Islamic education? Islamic education can simply be defined as any form of training provided for the learners, either in the school system or elsewhere, in line with the Islamic injunctions, for the purpose of acquiring knowledge, skills, attitude, or any other behavioral characteristics considered beneficial to man and his physical and social environment. Goals of African traditional education. Generally, the goals of African traditional education is to preserve the cultural heritage of every community and transmit same to the succeeding generation. Similarly, African traditional education is aimed at producing individuals who will fit properly in the society. But in specific terms, African traditional education has the following goals. 1, to develop the child's physical skills. 2, to develop the child's character. 3, to inculcate respect for elders and those in positions of authority. 4, to develop intellectual skills of the child. 5, to acquire specific vocational training and develop a healthy attitude towards honest labor. 6, to develop a sense of belonging and participate actively in family and community affairs. That is promotion of cultural heritage. And 7, to understand, appreciate, and promote the cultural heritage of the community at large. Goals of Islamic education. Islamic education fundamentally has 5 basic goals. And these include the following. 1, the development of the individual's whole being in all ramifications. That has to do with physical development of individual, mental development of individual, aesthetic development of individual, and spiritual development of the individual. 2, to equip the individual for progress and advancement of life, that is, life in this world and life in the world hereafter. 3, to lead the followers out from darkness to light. 4, to create citizens who are thinkers, scientists, artists, jurists, selfless workers, and scholars. Finally, to create in the individuals God's consciousness and maintaining link with God through 5 daily prayers. What about the contents of the African traditional education? African traditional education has innumerable contents. In fact, the language we speak, the language of the environment, is one of the contents of African traditional education. Even our dressing pattern, everything done within the society can be seen as the contents of African traditional education. These include our dressing pattern, religious practice, cooking and eating habits, greeting system, marriage ceremonies, chieftaincy coronation, burial ceremonies, tools for pursuing desirable economic activities, even morality, teaching children what is right and what is considered as a taboo is a content of African traditional education as well. The knowledge of the physical environment, social clubs and organizations, even taboos, proverbs, all these are seen as contents of African traditional education. And what are the methods used in the teaching and learning of African traditional education? Basically, there are 2 methods involved, namely direct and indirect methods. Under direct method, we have the following. 1, dialogue. 2, instruction. 3, reward. Reward, that has to do with gift, presentation of gift, praises, so as to reinforce that particular behavior. That is when a child has impressed you, has done something to make you proud. You reward him by a way of praising or presentation of gift to enable him keep it up, keep such good behavioral pattern up, maintenance of a particular behavior that is considered acceptable in the society. So reward, apprenticeship is another form, is another method used under direct method, used in the teaching of African traditional education. That is when a child is sent to understudy a craftsman for a fairly good period of time, and he will be placed under observation for some time. He will be learning, he will be taught on how to do a particular craft, handwork. It could be blacksmithing, it could be weaving, it could be hairdo, it could be tie and dye, it could be carpentry, it could be molding, it could be sculpturing, and so on and so forth. There are many of them. Another method used is participation, where a child is made to participate in certain ceremonies. By so doing, he learns, he observes, he takes part in it, so as to teach the younger ones, so as to know what is done, how certain cultural practices are carried out. It could be marriage, traditional marriage ceremony. It could be New Year festival ceremony. It could be chieftaincy coronation ceremony. It could be many other. There are a number of ceremonies that we do. Okay, another one is indoctrination. Even play is another way through which we teach and we learn ATE. Imitation is there, observation is there, oral literature, that is tales by moonlight. Punishment is there, social ceremonies is equally there. All these they fall under direct method through which the child learn, the child is taught, the child is trained. What? African traditional education. Okay, what about, the indirect method through which we learn or we teach ATE? The following fall under indirect method. One, riddles and joke, proverbs, folk tales, storytelling, oral literature, and so on and so forth. They are not direct, but they are indirect. When a child, is found of doing things that are considered, abomination or unacceptable within the society, there is a way you will speak to such a child so that he will learn. It might not be direct, but indirect, perhaps through a proverb, to show that what he's doing is bad and it will not earn him good reward at the end of the day. What about the characteristics of ATE? ATE has a lot of characteristics. One of the characteristics is that mother tongue, that is the language of the immediate environment, is used as the medium of instruction. Another characteristic is that some aspects of ATE are restrictive and secretive, as some experiences are solely reserved for certain class of people. Others include it is communal. It is a communal responsibility. Everybody is involved. There is no special rigid time for instruction. Indigenous education lacks documentation. It is also associated with illiteracy, as there is no form of reading and writing involved. It lacks certification. There is no dropout case, as education is a lifelong affair. It lacks dynamism, which means it is conservative and it does not give room for innovation or creativity. You are not expected to change what had been taught to you. So it lacks designated venue as well for instruction. It is not planned, neither is it organized. The schools are usually, okay, what about the characteristics of Islamic education? Basically, Islamic education has the following characteristics. The school days are usually, on Saturdays to Wednesdays. That is, the school week usually starts on Saturday and ends on Wednesday. And another characteristic is that there are usually, the schools are usually found in the mosque. Sometimes teacher's parlor, that is the malam's parlor. Sometimes the veranda, or even under a tree, which means there is no formal structure established for that purpose. Okay. Another characteristic of early Islamic education is that the curriculum is not uniform. The curriculum is not uniform. Bells are not used to summon the pupils. School fees are paid either in cash or in kind. What are the contributions of Islamic education towards civilization? Yes, Islamic education has made enormous contributions to the civilization of the entire world today. These include the following. One, the Muslims established universities and institutions of higher learning in many cities like Baghdad, Timbuktu, Cairo, and even Cordova. Many centuries before universities started emerging from the Western world. Two, they made a lot of contributions in the field of arts and architecture, as exemplified in their construction of mosques and palaces. They made a lot of advances in geometry. They invented algebra, developed trigonometric concepts such as sines, cosines, tangent, and cotangent. Muslims invented the Arabic numerals in the field of mathematics, which we all use today for business activities and other mathematical, operations. I think they made, I think this and many others were the contributions Islamic education had made to the development and civilization of the world. In summary, in this study session 1, you have learned the concept of ATE and Islamic education, the goals of African traditional education and Islamic education has equally been learned. The contents and methods of ATE equally learned. The features or characteristics of ATE and Islamic education learned. And finally, the contributions of Islamic education toward civilization thoroughly learned. Self-assessment questions. There are about 5 self-assessment questions attached to this particular study session 1, which you are expected to attempt. And each self-assessment question, measures or tests each learning outcome. As you will recall, there are 5 learning outcomes at the beginning of today's discussion. Each self-assessment question here is aimed at measuring each learning outcome. So self-assessment question 1 is define the concept of African traditional education and Islamic education. Define the concepts of African traditional education and Islamic education. This test learning outcome 1. Okay, self-assessment question 2 is list and explain 4 goals each of African traditional education and Islamic education in Nigeria. This test learning outcome 1.2. Self-assessment question 3 is describe the contents and methods used in African traditional education. 4, identify the general features of African traditional education and Islamic education in Nigeria. And finally, self-assessment question 1.5, which is for study session 1, and question 5 is highlight and discuss any 4 contributions of Islamic education toward civilization. Thank you for listening and have a blessed moment. Bye for now.